Your research is useless. Mark, you'll never save a single patient.
The words cut through the silence of the car like a surgical blade. Mark's hands tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles whitening as the city lights blurred past.
I run a real hospital. I save lives. You chase molecules in a lab that will never help anyone.
He didn't answer. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the rain tapping the windshield.
Say something. Defend yourself. Or are you finally admitting I am right?
His voice had left him. He stared at the wet road, her words echoing in the hollow of his chest.
Be honest with yourself, Mark. Your passion is a fantasy. You'll never amount to anything.
The drive home was a funeral, the death of what they'd been, buried under the weight of her certainty. Sandra looked out her window, arms crossed, while Mark remained a statue behind the wheel. 3 hours earlier, the donor dinner had been its own trial. Crystal glasses and veiled condescension. A board member dismissed Mark's work as an academic indulgence, not real medicine.
He's being modest. Mark's research is quite respected in his field.
The donor raised an eyebrow and turned to the more lucrative topic of the new surgery wing.
They see me as a charity case, and Sandra just confirmed it.
More wine, anyone.
Her smile was painted on, but her eyes kept flicking to Mark with something between pity and frustration. By the time the plates were cleared, the distance between them at the table felt wider than the car ride home.
She's ashamed of me. I am the embarrassing fiancé.
They barely spoke as they walked to the parking lot, the dinner's poison already festering. As the car door closed, the fragile silence shattered. Sandra turned to him, her voice already barbed with contempt.
You didn't say one word in there. You let them treat you like you are nothing. Again.
Mark stared ahead, the streetlights blurring through the windshield.
What was I supposed to do? Start an argument over dinner? That would have just made things worse.
You could have defended your work, shown some backbone. Instead, you just sat there.
She's never seen me as her equal. Just a project that failed.
Your research is a waste of time. You'll never make a real difference.
The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade.
I run a hospital. I see real results every day. You play with test tubes and hope for miracles.
Mark's silence was his only answer. He had nothing left to give her. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Mark sat at the kitchen table with a pen and paper. He wrote 4 lines, folded the paper once, and set the pen down without a sound. He slipped the engagement ring off his finger and laid it on top of the note. The ring caught the first ray of daylight, glinting like a promise already broken. Mark moved to the bedroom doorway and paused, watching Sandra's sleeping form for a long moment.
I can't keep fighting her version of me.
He turned away, zipped his suitcase shut, and lifted it from the bed. He walked out the apartment door, down the silent hallway, and didn't look back. The elevator doors closed, severing the last physical tie to the life he was leaving behind. In the apartment, the sun had fully risen, and the ring on the table sat abandoned. 6 years later, the man who had been told he would never save a patient stood in a laboratory of his own design. But the road there started with warehouse shifts and coffee runs. Survival paid in exhaustion.
Every hour I spend lifting boxes is fuel for a single purpose, proving she was blind.
In a cramped garage, he reignited his old research, the molecules Sandra had dismissed as fantasy. He worked through nights, fueled by anger and the ghost of her words, until one compound finally worked. Investors saw the data. Within a year, Meridian Biotech was born. 5 years later, he accepted an industry award. His therapies had already saved thousands. Now he held the patents that controlled the future of 3 life-saving drugs. His company's portfolio now included drugs that altered disease progression. The licensing renewal was approaching, and the name on the patents was Mark. The boardroom windows reflected the gray sky as the board of directors gathered. In the hospital pharmacy, a shelf held boxes labeled Revoxane by Meridian Biotech, the drug that kept their neurology patients alive. Back in the boardroom, the patent expiration was the only item on the agenda.
Our current license expires in 3 months. We need to negotiate renewal terms immediately.
A board member voiced the obvious fear. Without these drugs, they'd have to refer patients elsewhere.
I am aware of the stakes. I've handled tougher negotiations than this.
She walked to her office with the patent binder tucked under her arm, her stride brisk. Pausing in the quiet corridor, she flipped open the binder and scanned the patent holder's page. The founder's name was Mark. She stared at it for a long moment, but her mind refused the connection.
This is Sandra. Schedule the licensing meeting with Meridian Biotech as soon as possible.
Behind the closed door of her office, Sandra spread the patent documents across her desk with methodical precision. She was searching for leverage, a loophole, a weak clause, any legal vulnerability to tip the negotiation in the hospital's favor. Her fingers stopped on the page titled Founder Profile. A photo stared back at her.
That's not possible. The Mark I knew was a lab assistant with impossible dreams.
But the eyes in the photograph were unmistakable. Calmer now, silvered, yet piercing. Her coffee cup trembled in her hand, ripples betraying the shock she refused to voice.
He proved me wrong. Every word I threw at him that night was a lie.
She remembered the winter rain, his silence, her cold certainty. For a long time, she just stared at the wall, the binder forgotten.
This meeting is no longer a negotiation. It's a reckoning.
In his top-floor lab, Mark reviewed the agenda one last time. The patient impact counter on his screen now read 41,000 lives.
6 years ago, she called my work a fantasy. Today, 41,000 patients prove otherwise.
The glass model in his hand represented the first compound he ever designed, a reminder of his beginning. He turned to his legal team with final instructions.
Keep the pricing fair. Generous access. No punitive clauses.
His team nodded. They had expected a harder line, but Mark's resolve was unshakable.
Revenge would make me no better than her. This is about patience, not pride.
The stack of patent certificates on his wall was no longer just paper. It was a monument to years of silent work. He was ready. The meeting with Regional Medical Center was set for 9 the next morning. At exactly 9, the boardroom door opened. Mark entered alone, his stride unhurried, his navy blazer immaculate. The board members rose with practiced courtesy, but Sandra remained seated for a beat too long.
He looks exactly like the photo, only taller, more sure. The man I dismissed doesn't exist anymore.
Mark's gaze swept the room, pausing only briefly on her face before moving on, as if scanning a directory. A board member extended his hand warmly, offering Mark the seat at the head of the table.
Welcome. We appreciate you coming directly.
I prefer to handle these things in person. It's important.
Sandra's hands were clammy beneath the table, her rehearsed opening forgotten.
Shall we begin?
The terms were inside a folder before him, but everyone could feel the unspoken weight in the air. Mark opened the folder and began to speak, his voice steady and free of any hint of emotion.
The pricing will remain at current levels, with an automatic annual adjustment for inflation only.
A board member leaned forward, disbelief softening his features as he exchanged a look with a colleague.
Patient access will expand under the new terms. No dosage caps, no prior authorization hurdles.
Sandra's eyes narrowed. This wasn't the hostile negotiation she had braced for. It felt almost like charity.
Why isn't he punishing us? After everything I said that night in the car.
Meridian Biotech isn't interested in squeezing hospitals. Our mission is patient outcomes.
He still hadn't looked directly at her. His focus remained entirely on the board, as if she were invisible.
That's unusually generous. What's the catch?
No catch. Just a fair partnership moving forward.
The board chairman signed the contract with a flourish, and the room exhaled in collective relief. One by one, Mark shook the hands of each board member, his grip firm, his smile practiced. Sandra stood when her turn came, forcing a composed expression as she extended her hand.
After 6 years, he still can't even look at me.
Mark walked past her, outstretched hand, and clasped the fingers of the next board member instead. A startled murmur rippled through the board members.
He's not going to acknowledge me at all.
He completed the circle of handshakes, and returned to his seat, leaving Sandra frozen in place. The silence stretched, heavy with unasked questions. Then Mark stood again, adjusting his blazer, and the room braced for what would come next.
My research has now saved 41,000 patients. I checked this morning.
Sandra's hand, still suspended in the air, began to tremble. The silence became a physical pressure.
Thank you for your honesty back then. It sharpened the urgency.
The words landed like a scalpel, precise, clean, and final. The board members looked from Mark to Sandra, their confusion turning to sharp curiosity.
He just told them without telling them. Everyone will ask now.
Mark turned toward the door, then paused. He looked back over his shoulder, directly at Sandra. His eyes held no triumph, only the steady closure of a man who had nothing left to prove. Then he turned away. He walked out, and the door shut behind him with the cold finality of a verdict. Sandra's hand dropped to her side like a stone. She remained frozen, staring at the door as if she could will it to open again. A board member cleared his throat, but the sound died before it could form a question, leaving only the silence of a reckoning. The silence that followed was not empty. It was dense with the weight of everyone in the room, waiting for one person to explain.
They're all looking at me. They want answers I can't give without ruining myself.
One by one, the board members turned their heads toward Sandra, their faces demanding the context they had missed. The board chairman's words were simple but lethal. What exactly did he mean by your honesty, Sandra?
It was a personal matter years ago. It doesn't.
Her voice evaporated under the weight of 6 pairs of eyes.
Every excuse I make will just dig a deeper hole.
The board members exchanged another look, and the air in the room grew heavier with suspicion. Another board member broke the silence, his tone hardening. We need to know if there's a conflict of interest here, Sandra. She had no answer, only the cold realization that the reckoning had only just begun.
It was a private misunderstanding. It has no bearing on this agreement.
The chairman's gaze sharpened. He demanded she explain the honesty Mark had referenced. 6 years of silence were now a liability. A board member asked bluntly if she had been personally involved with the patent holder.
We ended things badly, but that's ancient history.
The board exchanged knowing glances, pressing for details on what she had said to him.
I told him his research was a fantasy, that it would never save a patient.
The room went cold. The board members realized the man they'd just signed with had been humiliated by their own administrator. A board member pointed at the contract, his tone sharp. The man she dismissed now owned the drugs their patients needed.
I didn't know he'd ever. I was wrong. I see that now.
The chairman stood abruptly, his expression a mixture of fury and disappointment. He announced a 30-minute recess to decide how to proceed. Sandra opened her mouth to protest, but the board members were already rising, their faces closed.
Wait. I've given this hospital 15 years. One mistake shouldn't define me.
The chairman paused at the door, his voice carrying the weight of the institution. We'll decide in 30 minutes. Then the door clicked shut, and she was alone with the contract and the silence.
They're going to fire me. I can see it in their eyes.
Her hands found the edge of the table, gripping it as if it were the last stable thing in her world. She lowered herself into a chair, and the tears she had been holding since the handshake came at last. The contract lay a few inches from her sleeve, already signed by both parties, a deal that had cost her everything.
He didn't even have to raise his voice. One quiet sentence and my career is over.
For the next 20 minutes, she did not move, her head bowed over the table, the hollow tick of the wall clock measuring her fall. The hospital shrank in Mark's rearview mirror, its glass facade becoming just another building.
41,000 patients. That number is the only thing that mattered today.
His hands rested lightly on the wheel, the tension of the meeting already dissolving.
She was right about one thing. Her words did sharpen my focus, but they couldn't define me.
A billboard for a children's hospital fund flashed past, and he allowed himself a small, private smile.
The patients don't care about old wounds. They just need the medicine.
He merged onto the freeway. the hospital now just a speck in the distance.
Closure isn't a dramatic exit. It's driving away and not looking back.
His expression was not triumphant, but settled, like a man who has finally closed a book ahead. The skyline sharpened, and the towers of Meridian Biotech rose to meet him. The minutes dragged into nearly an hour. Sandra's tears had dried, leaving her face raw and hollow. When the door finally opened, it was the board's vice chair, a woman whose neutrality masked a knife's edge.
Are you here to fire me in person?
The vice chair closed the door softly and sat across from her, placing a single sheet of paper on the table. The board has decided to conduct a formal review. Your administrative leave begins now, pending a final decision within 1 week.
A week. A full week of waiting for them to decide if my 15 years mean nothing. I see.
She signed the temporary suspension notice without reading it, her hand moving mechanically. Then the vice chair left, and Sandra was alone again, the echo of her own heartbeat filling the silence. The week ahead stretched like a chasm, and for the first time in her career, she had no plan. A week later, the boardroom was colder than she remembered. They had summoned her without the courtesy of a phone call.
They've already decided. I can see the verdict in their posture before a word is spoken.
The chairman's words were clipped. Demotion to department coordinator, effective immediately, pending her acceptance.
Department coordinator. That's 3 levels below my current role.
Her hospital badge was replaced on the spot. The new title printed without fanfare on a temporary card.
15 years of building this hospital, and they stripped my title in 60 seconds.
They assigned her a windowless office near the maintenance department, its previous occupant a retiring logbook keeper.
I'll consider my options.
Word spread through the hospital corridors faster than any official memo. Sandra Carver had been publicly demoted. In her new office, she sat motionless, the enormity of the fall carving new lines into her face. The screen in her cramped office glowed with the hospital's internal outcome dashboard. She opened the file for Meridian Biotech's drugs, Revoxane, the others, and the numbers were unambiguous.
Every graph shows a steep drop in mortality. He was right, completely.
A tear slid down her cheek and landed on the keyboard, blurring the digits.
You saved 41,000 patients, and I called you useless.
She scrolled further, reading the personal stories attached to the trial data, letters from families.
He didn't need my belief. He had his molecules and his fury.
For a long moment, she just stared at the screen, her reflection a ghost over the graphs. Then she closed the laptop, the click echoing in the silence of her fall.
I was wrong, and he never even needed to say it.
In his quiet lab, a crisp white envelope lay on Mark's desk, marked with a child's handwriting. Inside, a crayon drawing of a family holding hands, and a few wobbly sentences. Dear Mr. Mark, my mommy came home because of your medicine. Thank you for making her not sick anymore.
41,000 is a number. But this drawing, this is what the number means.
He set the drawing down next to the glass molecular model on his desk.
I proved her wrong. But more than that, I proved myself right.
He walked to the window, looking out over the skyline, no longer searching for validation.
She sharpened the urgency, but the purpose was always mine.
The future was not about old wounds. It was about the next molecule, the next child's letter. He turned back to his desk, the glass model catching the light, and began the next iteration of hope. Days later, in her windowless office, Sandra found a photograph buried under old files, a faded image of a much younger Mark, his arm around her, both smiling in front of the university lab.
I remember that day. He just discovered a promising compound and was so full of joy.
She traced the edge of his face with a trembling finger. A tear dropped onto the photograph, blurring the ink of his smile. She didn't wipe it away. Instead, she turned the photo face down and slid it into a desk drawer. The drawer slid shut with a soft thud.
Maybe one day I'll look at it again, but not yet.
She sealed the box with tape, and for a brief moment, the weight seemed a fraction lighter. On the rooftop of Meridian Biotech, Mark stood at the railing, the city sprawling beneath a late afternoon sun. Across town, Sandra pushed through the hospital's exit doors, a small cardboard box cradled in her arms. Behind her, in the empty conference room, a single hospital administrator badge still lay on the carpet, forgotten. She did not look back. The automatic doors closed with a soft hiss, sealing the past inside. Miles away, the wind lifted Mark's hair as he stared at the horizon, a ghost of a smile on his lips. The contract had been signed, the lives saved, but the silent architecture of that day remained. A chair pushed back, a door closed. Sandra's footsteps echoed on the pavement, each one a quiet beat in a journey she was only beginning. Mark turned from the railing, the city at his back, and walked inside, his work calling him forward. Some words cost a future. Others, spoken in quiet vindication, build a new one, and in that silence, the story found its end.